Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
With just days left before the fiscal year ends, Congress is locked in a standoff over how, or even whether, to keep the government open. House Republicans passed what they say is a clean CR, but it did not pass the Senate. Now the House is out until after October 1st. Here to explain what these moves mean for the shutdown clock is WTOP's Capitol Hill correspondent, Mitchell Miller. Mitchell, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely.
Well, there was a lot of action in Congress on Friday regarding dueling continuing resolutions. Catch us up. What was in the House proposal? Let's start there.
All right. So this was a flurry of activity that we often see like a day or two right before the deadline for a shutdown. This time it all happened last week, right on Friday, lawmakers trying to get all of this done and then get out of town. But of course, that didn't actually happen. So in the House, it was a clean continuing resolution. From the Republican standpoint, they said this is what we do all the time. It includes all kinds of basic level funding for everything, but it also was to include additional security funding for lawmakers because, of course, of what happened with Charlie Kirk. There's been a lot of concern here on the Hill about threats against lawmakers, which have just skyrocketed. And so they tucked in $30 million extra here and there, and then they pulled some from other funds. So there was a lot of additional funding for lawmakers to use within their own offices, as well as the legislative branch more broadly, and the White House, actually. And then separately from that, just for the people here in D.C., it was also going to include a fix to that infamous budget glitch for D.C. of $1 billion that there was a hearing about last week with D.C. crime, and the mayor, Muriel Bowser, said, boy, we could really use that money if that's included in there. So there were a few extra things, but essentially it was the classic clean CR, and that's why Republicans have been pointing the finger at Democrats and vice versa, which we'll get into more in a moment.
So the House bill passed on straight party lines, right?
Right. There was just one Democrat that voted for it, and so it passed pretty much as expected, that it was going to be largely along party lines. And then the real question, of course, was what was going to happen in the Senate.
And what did happen in the Senate?
Well, in the Senate Democrats tried to pass their own piece of legislation that would have extended government spending through the end of October. It was really a largely symbolic measure. They tried to restore a lot of the cuts that are in the big, beautiful bill. They wanted to bring back a lot of things related to health care. They have been really beating the drum in connection with extending the tax credits on the Affordable Care Act, as you know. They've had lots of complaints about the cuts to Medicaid. So that was clearly probably going to be dead on arrival, and it certainly was. What was also interesting, though, as they moved to the House-passed bill, it really didn't even come close to getting the 60 votes that were needed for a variety of reasons, but it only went down on a 44-48 vote. You had one Democrat, Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman, voting for it. You had two Republicans voting against it, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Rand Paul of Kentucky. Sometimes that happens with these bills, but the bill just kind of went down very quickly.
They would have needed the 60-vote threshold to pass it, right?
Absolutely, yep, and they were not even close.
I'm speaking with Mitchell Miller. He's the Capitol Hill correspondent for WTOP. All right, so Mitchell, what happens now? Both chambers are on recess this week. Is there any viable path to avoiding a shutdown before October 1st?
I think that the viable path to avoiding a shutdown, unlike in past showdowns where we've had this before, it's really almost closed. There's, very slight glimmer maybe that something could happen at the last minute. You never know with Congress. But I think we really are trucking right down the road toward a shutdown because there doesn't seem to be any even alternate ramp that we usually see in these kind of showdowns. For example, the House, before they left on Friday, they said, oh, by the way, the House leadership said, we are not coming back on the 29th or the 30th. Obviously, the 30th is the key deadline date. So essentially what they are going to do is politically jam Democrats and dare them not to do something on the Senate side with Senate Republicans. And unlike what happened in March, when Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer got a lot of grief for a lot of people said he caved to what Republicans want, this time Democrats are really basically all on board with the position that they're taking, which is they have decided to put all their chips in on saying that it's the Republicans' fault because they are not negotiating on these key issues related to these Affordable Care Act tax credits, along with other various issues. We've talked about the security issue, and they're essentially just saying that Republicans are trying to go it alone, and this is not the way it's been done in the past. Now, Republicans, on the other hand, as I noted earlier, they've said, look, this is a clean CR. This is essentially what we always talk about, wanting to buy more time so that we can get through to November 21st in this case, because that's where this legislation would extend funding to, and then we can do the appropriation work that we always do in Congress. But as we've talked about before, the appropriations process is now really poisoned for a lot of reasons, and I just don't think that there is any reason that we are not going to have a shutdown.
Has the White House weighed in at all? There's always talk about who's going to get blamed if there's a shutdown, and sometimes it reverts back to the president and his team.
Right. And in this case, I think the White House feels confident that the Democrats are going to get the blame. The Democrats, of course, say, well, the Republicans they control all the levers of power. They control the White House. They control all of Congress. They have extra votes on the Supreme Court. But the White House basically told Republicans, stick with this clean CR, and then we're going to push the blame on the Democrats. The Democrats, it's a big gamble for them because when you're the party that is trying to do something in addition, as we've seen in these past shutdown confrontations, I think it's easier for the White House to say, well, the Democrats always talk about how they want government agencies to be open. They've complained about us making cuts, and now they want to shut the government down. I can almost hear the president making these arguments as we get closer to the deadline. The Democrats, for their part, they are going to really be pushing this message on these health care issues.
With both of the chambers in recess this week, can we hope that the staffs are scurrying around in the back rooms trying to find some compromise? Is there anything that might break loose on the 29th or 30th that would give us hope?
I think actually the only real glimmer of hope would be the staffers. I mean, they're the ones that do the hard work, as you well know. And, if they could try to find some middle ground on a few of these issues to help move things forward, that might crack something. It usually takes a couple of big breaks small breaks rather, for something to actually happen at the last minute. But right now, I just think that both sides are so dug in so hard and so confident in their own positions that's why I don't think there is going to be a breakthrough.
Well, Mitchell, the next time we talk, we'll know for sure.
Yes, we will.
That's Mitchell Miller. He's the Capitol Hill correspondent for WTOP. Thanks as always, Mitchell.
You bet.
We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts.